Hello, this is Taryn from Elegant Upgrades here with another upgrade for you. So I found this little bench off the marketplace. It was free because it was very ratty on top, but the actual structure of it and the entire piece was actually in really good condition. So that was awesome. We're gonna do a little makeover here. So I start by just taking everything off that I can, and then I'm gonna give it a really good clean with some liquid sandpaper. This stuff's awesome because you don't have to wash it off, but it also gives a little bit of grit for the paint to adhere to. This piece wasn't super shiny, so I wasn't terribly concerned about that, but it is also a degreaser, so I'm using it for that purpose because this was really old, and as you could tell from the beginning shot, it's been through some things. So I'm going to take off the legs, and this is strictly because it's going to be easier to paint around the crevices of the legs if they're removed. So you can leave them on if you don't mind painting around and having a messier bottom, but I didn't want a messy bottom, so I'm taking off the legs and I will paint them separately. Then here's a fun thing. I'm using actually joint compound. I'm just mixing up a batch of it to where it's the thickness that I like, and I'm adding a bit of iron gate to this just so that it's not a stark white underneath my paint finish in case, you know, there's any distressing or anything that comes through. I don't want a stark white. I want like a lighter gray. So I'm mixing that together. It's darker now. Once it dries, it actually will lighten up a bit, so that's something to keep in mind as well. This is just going to add texture to the piece. So I'm using a chip brush, so I'm not using any of my good brushes for anything because this will wreck your brushes. Just imagine you're going to throw away the brush at the end. If you get to it quickly, you can save it, but that's why I use a chip brush. So I'm going to be doing a blend with Iron Gate, Sapphire, Aquamarine. I've got a blended kind of cream color and then light yellow. So first I'm starting with my dark color. I'm going to paint both legs. I'll do 2 coats on these before I reattach them. And then as those are drying, I'll just start the blend on my piece. So I like to generally start with a darker bottom. It looks better to my eye, but you can reverse your blends however you like. So I'm starting with the Iron Gate. I'm not doing a super thick line of Iron Gate because I'm keeping in mind that the legs are also the gray color. And there is no other color blended into the legs. So that's going to be the heaviest portion of the color is down on the legs. So then I'm going in with the Sapphire, blending that in with the gray, and you can do your color combinations any way that you like. However, just think of whatever colors are close to each other are going to be the ones blended together, and you want to make sure that they're in a similar range so that it's easier to do your blend. So this is just the base coat. It's not terribly important to make sure everything's perfect in this right now. It doesn't really matter. You're just kind of figuring out your placement and how you want to do it and getting it on there. So as you can see, it's kind of messy, and that's okay. We're not terribly worried about it. So this piece has kind of a curved shape to it, and I'm trying to let the paint kind of ride with that. So as you can see in the middle, it kind of comes up a little bit, and the outer edges, it comes up a little bit, just because I want to emphasize the curves of this piece because it's such an unusual thing. If this was more of a flat surface, I probably wouldn't come up in the middle at all, and I would just maybe come up in the outer edges. So when I'm blending between my colors, this is a personal preference, but I don't really mind if the colors mix together. I'm kind of a messy painter in that way. I'm not terribly concerned if a little bit of my Aquamarine gets in my Sapphire, and you know, it's just not something that I really care about that much. I am working with a spray bottle just to keep the paint wet and moving because it does have that joint compound on there. It is also absorbing liquid and paint and all that stuff. So you do have to use a little bit more water if you're going to be using a texture. So here I didn't feel like it was deep enough at the bottom, so I'm just going back with a little bit more gray. Not a lot. And then here's the light yellow. Once I got this on here, I didn't like how the light yellow went to the cream, went to the Aquamarine. So I got them on there. It was fine, but it just didn't bring me a ton of joy. So as I was doing this, I'm kind of deciding like, oh, okay, do I want to get rid of the cream or the light yellow? Because I knew I wanted to get rid of one of them. And that way I could widen up my blend margins as well, because I'm not having that many different colors. So in the end, when we start our second coat, you'll see I've omitted the cream color that I blended out and just did the yellow to the aquamarine, and it looks awesome. So that's kind of what's great about these base coats that you're doing, where it doesn't have to be perfect. It kind of just gives you an idea. And if you end up hating something about it, on the second coat, you can totally fix it. So here's where we're going to start with the yellow this time. And that's because I like to go from one direction and then the other. Had I started at the top, I would have started at the bottom on my second coat. But so I always go in reverse mode. I'm using quite a bit more water this round than I was just laying on the coat, the first coat, because it helps blending, obviously, and it just kind of helps everything flow a little better together. So as you can see, I just love the way the aquamarine and the yellow hit together. It's just so much nicer than with just the cream color in between. So this is the route I ended up sticking with, and I love it. So now I'm coming in with the Sapphire. Okay, just Sapphire is one of the best colors ever. It is so beautiful. It's like this really pastel-y, purpley, bluey awesomeness. It's just lovely. And it actually blends really well with a multitude of other colors because it does have those blues and purples in it. It's a really nice color to blend into other colors. And so you can see my blend margins have gotten a lot larger since I've removed a color. So that's really cool too, and it helps with the overall blend of the piece. And as you can see, I have the legs reattached now because I don't need to put any more coats on them, and they're just really neat and clean on there because I took them off and painted them separately. So this is just going back and forth. As you can see, when I first put the iron gate on, it looked really stark against the Sapphire, but they blend together so nicely. Okay, and then once my paint is dry, I'm going to be sealing it with the Burgundy Wax. So if you do not want a strong tinted color, you would want to seal with the clear wax first. But I wanted to have a overall color change with the Burgundy Wax, so I'm sealing it with the Burgundy Wax first. Now, what's awesome about this is since we have so much texture that we got from the joint compound, it's going to sit in all those nooks and crannies and crevices and all that amazingness, and it's going to not only tint your paint colors and help the blend look just a little more seamless, but also sit in all those spots and just look really, really awesome at the end. So after this sits on for about 40-ish minutes, I went through and wiped it back. And then the next day, I actually went over with another cloth and did a really nice buffing on it. And that's just making sure I'm getting off any excess wax because we don't want any of that left on the piece. And then I'm going to do add the top. I did redo the top entirely, obviously. So we'll get that on there. And that made a huge difference, obviously, because that was the worst part about this entire little bench chest deal we have. And then as I was looking at it, I just felt like it needed something else, something to break up the pasteliness of the overall paint job. So I went through and decided that I wanted to add a stencil to it. So I did a vintage style lace stencil, and I just did it with some rub and buff to add a little bit of metallic awesomeness to it. So I didn't like silver and I didn't like black, so I mixed the two together and made kind of a pewter color, which is what we have here. And then I just went over and stenciled all around the top of it. And this thing is just lovely. And you can see the Burgundy Wax sitting in there too. I couldn't be happier with this piece. I think it is so lovely. So you can get all the things, all the paint and the wax, all that from Chalk Mountain. Just go to their website and yeah, enjoy, have fun, make something awesome.